Think about the last time you stood in line at a grocery store or a coffee shop. You probably have a small stack of plastic cards in your wallet or a dozen digital barcodes saved on your phone. Most of us participate in these programs without thinking much about it. We scan a code or swipe a card because we are told that eventually we will get something for free. You might be collecting points for a free sandwich or airline miles for a vacation. At first, it feels like a simple gift from a business that wants you to come back. But have you ever noticed how much work it actually takes to use those rewards? You might find that the flight you wanted is suddenly not available for points. Or maybe the sandwich shop changed the rules, and now you need 15 stamps instead of 10. This is where the confusion starts for most people. We feel like we are earning something valuable, but the rules seem to shift just as we get close to the finish line. It feels like a moving target. You spend your money and you give away your data, but the actual benefit feels harder to reach every year. This is not an accident, and it is not just your imagination. There is a specific reason why these programs have changed from simple thank you gifts into complex systems that act more like gatekeepers. In this first part of our discussion, we are going to look at the personal cost of this shift. We are going to look at why your wall, it is full of these promises, and why the banks and airlines have spent billions of dollars to make sure you stay interested. We will look at the real numbers behind your daily spending, and how even a small 1% or 2% reward changes the way you think about a purchase. By the end of this section, you will understand why these programs are designed to keep you in a cycle of earning, and why they have become so much more defensive over time. It is about more than just a free flight. It is about how your habits have been mapped out by some of the smartest math experts in the world. Let us look at how we got here and what it actually costs you to participate in these systems every single day, to understand why your points feel different today. We have to look back at how this all started because the original goal was much simpler than what we see now. In the late 1970s, the airline industry in the United States went through a massive change called deregulation. Before this happened, the government controlled where airlines could fly and how much they could charge for a ticket. When those rules went away, airlines suddenly had to compete for your business on price and schedule for the very first time. This created a problem for the companies. If every airline is flying the same route for the same price, how do they make sure you keep coming back to them instead of just picking the cheapest flight on a different carrier? The answer arrived in 1981 with the creation of the first modern loyalty programs. We should start by looking at American Airlines and their project called AAdvantage. The concept was actually based on something very old and very simple, which was the grocery store trading stamp. In the middle of the 20th century, stores would give you small paper stamps when you bought bread or milk. You would stick them in a book, and when the book was full, you could trade it for a toaster or a vacuum cleaner. The airlines took this exact same idea, but applied it to the miles you flew. In 1981, American Airlines launched their program with a list of their most frequent flyers. They decided that if a traveler flew a certain amount of miles, the airline would track that distance and eventually give them a free ticket. At the beginning, this was treated as a pure marketing expense. It was a gift to say thank you for being a loyal customer. There were no complex web pages or mobile apps. You simply received a statement in the mail showing how many miles you had earned. If you had enough, you could call the airline and they would mail you a paper voucher for a free flight. It is important to understand the scale of this. In the first year, they only had a few 100,000 members. The system was small enough that the airline did not really worry about the long-term cost. They just wanted to keep their business travelers from switching to United or Delta. Shortly after Americans started their program, a smaller company called Texas International Airlines tried something even more aggressive. They created a program named after the famous pilot Amelia Earhart. They offered a credit of 1 mile for every mile flown, but they also gave huge bonuses just for signing up. This was the first time an airline used rewards not just to keep old customers, but to aggressively steal new ones from competitors. For a few years, this worked perfectly for the traveler. The math was transparent and the rewards were easy to understand. If you flew 20,000 miles, you got a free domestic ticket. There were no blackout dates and no hidden fees. The programs were viewed as a way to fill seats that would have otherwise gone empty. Because an empty seat earns $0 for an airline, giving it away to a loyal customer felt like it cost the company almost nothing. However, this period of simplicity did not last. As more people joined these programs, the airlines realized they were creating a new kind of currency that lived outside of the traditional banking system. By the mid-1980s, billions of miles were being earned every year. This is when the logic of the system began to shift. The airlines realized that these miles were not just gifts anymore. They were promises of future travel that the airline would eventually have to fulfill. If too many people tried to use their miles at the same time, it could actually hurt the bottom line of the company. This led to the first defensive moves in the industry. Airlines started adding expiration dates to miles and creating the first award charts that required more miles for popular destinations. They realized that to keep the system sustainable, they had to move away from the simple stamp book model and towards something more controlled. This history is vital because it shows that the complexity we deal with today was built one layer at a time to solve specific financial problems for airlines. They started by giving you a gift to win your loyalty, but they quickly realized they needed to build a gate to manage how and when you could actually use that gift. As we move forward, keep in mind that the original promise was a 1-to-1 ratio of miles flown to rewards earned. Today, that ratio has been broken down and rebuilt into a system that favors the company much more than the traveler. The move from the 1981 model to the current system reveals a lot about how companies handle human behavior. Once they knew you were hooked on the idea of earning points, they could afford to make those points much harder to spend. This was the birth of the gatekeeper mentality that defines your travel rewards today. Now that we know how these programs began as simple marketing tools, we need to look at the math that changed everything. To understand why your points are harder to use today, you have to see them the way an airline accountant sees them. In the world of business, when a company owes you something in the future, it is called a liability. Imagine you own a small coffee shop and you give out 10 coupons for a free latte. On your books, you do not just have coffee beans and milk. You have a debt of 10 lattes that you might have to give away at any moment. For a small shop, that is not a problem. But for a global airline, this becomes a massive financial weight. By the time we reached the 1990s, airlines had issued trillions of miles. This created a giant pool of debt on their balance sheets. If every traveler decided to use their miles on the same day, the airline would have no seats left to sell for actual cash. This is the core conflict of the system. The airline wants you to keep earning miles because it makes you loyal. But they also need to limit how many miles are redeemed so they can keep their cash flow healthy. To manage this, they started using specific systemic controls. One of the biggest tools is called breakage. Breakage is the term for miles that are earned but never used. Maybe the traveler forgets about them, or maybe the miles expire before they can be spent. From a business perspective, breakage is wonderful because it wipes the debt off the books for free. If you have 10,000 miles and they expire, the airline just saved the cost of a flight. Another tool is the yield management system. This is the software that decides how many seats on a flight can be bought with points versus cash. If a flight from New York to London has 300 seats, the airline might only allow 5 of those seats to be booked with miles. They do this because they would rather sell the other 295 seats for $1,000 each. When you see a message saying that no award seats are available, you are seeing the system defend itself. The airline is prioritizing cash over your loyalty currency. We also have to look at the cost of the actual reward. In the early days, a domestic flight might cost 20,000 miles. But as the airline costs for fuel and labor went up, they realized that a fixed price for points was dangerous. If a ticket costs $500 in cash but only 20,000 miles, the value of each mile is 2.5 cents. But if the cash price jumps to $1,000 and the mile price stays at 20,000, the mile is now worth 5 cents. The airline does not want you to get that much value because it costs them too much, so they started raising the prices in miles to match the cash value. This is why we moved away from simple award charts and toward dynamic pricing. Now, the amount of points you need changes every day based on demand. This allows the system to ensure that the airline always stays in control of the profit margin. By treating miles as a currency that they can devalue at any time, the airlines turned a simple gift into a complex financial instrument. They learned that they could print as many miles as they wanted, similar to how a government prints money. But they also held the power to decide what those miles could actually buy. This systemic shift is why you feel like the goalposts are always moving. The system is designed to keep the liability manageable by making it just difficult enough for you to spend your points. Understanding this math is the first step in realizing that you are not just a passenger, you are a participant in a massive, private monetary system. The airlines are acting like central banks, and their primary goal is to protect their own balance sheet, not your vacation plans. When you see those numbers changing, you are seeing the gatekeeper at work, adjusting the price of entry to keep the house ahead of the game. Let us step back from the big numbers for a moment and look at how this actually feels for you as an individual. Imagine it is 1985. You are a business traveler and you have just finished a trip. To find out how many miles you have, you do not pull out a phone and refresh an app. You wait for a physical envelope to arrive in your mailbox once a month. You open it and see a printed number on a piece of paper. If you want to use those miles, you sit down with a rotary phone or a large desktop unit, and you call a travel agent or the airline directly. The person on the other end looks at a physical chart and tells you yes or no. The process was slow and it was manual. This friction meant that most people only engaged with their rewards a few times a year. Today, the experience is completely different. You can see your balance update in real time while you are still standing at the checkout counter. You get push notifications telling you that you are 5,000 miles away from a gold status level. You see advertisements for credit cards that offer 100,000 points just for signing up. Everything is faster and more accessible. But this speed has created a new kind of mental work. In the 1980s, you did not have to worry about the value of a mile changing while you were sleeping. You did not have to compare 10 different transfer partners to see if your points were worth 1 cent or 3 cents. The simplicity of the past meant that even though you had fewer options, the options you had were predictable. Now you are expected to be your own travel agent and your own financial analyst. Most people feel a sense of pressure to get the maximum value out of every point they earn. If you spend 50,000 points on a flight that you could have bought for $500, you might feel like you made a mistake because you only got 1 cent per point in value. You might see someone on the internet talking about how they got 10 cents per point by flying in a first-class cabin to Japan. This creates a situation where you are no longer just enjoying a reward, you are managing a portfolio. We have moved from a world where a free flight was a surprise bonus to a world where missing out on a high-value redemption feels like a personal loss. This is a significant change in our daily psychology. We spend time researching credit card categories and tracking bonus offers because we do not want to leave money on the table. The banks and airlines know that this gamification keeps us engaged. They have made the interface easy to use, but they have made the underlying rules much harder to master. You are constantly being prompted to interact with the system, whether it is through a limited time offer or a reminder that your status is about to expire. This keeps the program at the front of your mind. It turns your normal spending on groceries or gas into a strategic game. When you choose one card over another at the register, you are doing a small amount of mental math. You are calculating the trade-off between immediate convenience and future travel. This is the personal reality of the modern rewards era. We have more access and more data than ever before, but we also carry a much higher mental load. The gift has become a job. Understanding this shift helps explain why you might feel exhausted by the very programs that are supposed to be giving you something for free. You are no longer just a passenger. You are a manager of a tiny private currency, and that requires constant attention to keep the gatekeepers from devaluing your hard-earned work. To understand the current state of travel, we have to look at how the sky was divided into different social classes. Think about the last time you boarded a plane. You walked through the front door and passed by large, comfortable seats with plenty of legroom and passengers drinking water out of real glass. Then you walked through a curtain into a much tighter space where the seats are narrower and the air feels more crowded. This physical divide is a direct result of how travel rewards changed our society. In the middle of the 20th century, flying was a rare event for most people. It was expensive and elite. When the industry was deregulated and prices dropped, flying became something that almost everyone could afford. This was a great victory for the average consumer, but it created a brand new problem for the airlines. When everyone can afford a ticket, the product becomes a commodity. This means people start choosing their flights based only on the lowest price. For the airlines, this was a race to the bottom that destroyed their profit margins. They needed a way to bring back the feeling of being an elite traveler without raising the prices for everyone. They found the solution in loyalty status. This is the societal layer of the gatekeeper system. The rewards programs were used to build a new hierarchy that is not based on how much you paid for a single ticket, but on how much of your life you spend with one specific company. We now live in a society where your experience at the airport is determined by a digital rank. If you have high status, you get to stand in a shorter line. You get to sit in a quiet lounge away from the noise of the terminal, and you get to board the plane before everyone else. This does not just happen because the airline likes you. It happens because the airline is using these perks to create a psychological barrier. When you have attained a certain level of status, the thought of flying with a different airline feels like a downgrade. You would rather pay $50 more to fly with your preferred carrier than lose the right to stand in the fast line. This has changed how we behave as a culture of travelers. We have accepted that there is a tiered system of human priority at the gate. The airline rewards programs have successfully reintroduced a class system into a mass market industry. We see this in the numbers. A very small group of travelers, perhaps only 10% of the people on a plane, often account for half of the airline's profit. These are the people the gatekeepers are designed to protect. Everything from the priority boarding groups to the hidden upgrade lists is a mechanism to keep this small group feeling separate from the crowd. For the rest of the passengers, the experience has become more utilitarian. The seats have become smaller, and the service has become more automated because the airline is focusing its resources on the top tier. This creates a societal pressure to join the game. You see the person in the priority lane, and you want to be that person because the alternative is increasingly uncomfortable. This is why people will take what is called a mileage run, which is when a person flies to a distant city and immediately flies back just to earn enough points to keep their status for another year. When you look at it from the outside, spending 12 hours on a plane to nowhere seems illogical. But when you understand the societal value of being a gatekeeper, it starts to make sense. You are not buying a flight. You are buying a escape from the friction of modern travel. The rewards programs have turned a basic transportation service into a social competition. We have moved from a world where the goal was to get from point A to point B as cheaply as possible to a world where we are constantly trying to level up our access. This shift has deep implications for how we treat each other in public spaces. It has made us more tolerant of poor service for the majority as long as we believe there is a way for us to personally earn our way out of it. The gatekeepers are not just defending the airline's money, they are defending a social structure that keeps us competing for a better seat. To truly understand why the points in your account exist, we have to look at the hidden partnership between airlines and banks, because this is the engine that drives the entire system. You might think that an airline is in the business of flying planes from one city to another, but if you look at their financial reports, you will see a very different story. For many major carriers, the most profitable part of their business is not selling seats, but selling miles to banks. This is the systemic shift that changed everything for the traveler. Imagine a large bank that issues credit cards. They want you to use their card for every purchase you make, from a pack of gum to a new refrigerator. To convince you to do this, they need to offer you a reward that feels valuable. They realized a long time ago that people value a free vacation more than they value a small amount of cash back. So the bank goes to an airline and buys billions of miles in bulk. The bank pays the airline real cash for these miles, often at a rate of about 1 cent or 1.5 cents per mile. Once the bank has these miles, they give them to you as a reward for your spending. This creates a massive circle of money. The bank wins because you use their card, and they collect transaction fees from merchants. The airline wins because they get a huge infusion of cash up front without even having to fly a plane yet. This relationship has grown so large that some airlines are now valued more for their loyalty programs than for their actual fleet of aircraft. During difficult economic times, airlines have even used their loyalty programs as collateral to take out billions of dollars in loans. This means the miles in your account are actually a form of private currency that supports the global travel infrastructure. But there is a trade-off for you in this systemic arrangement. Because banks are buying so many miles, there are more miles in circulation than ever before. This is similar to inflation in a normal economy. When there is too much money chasing too few goods, prices go up. In our case, the goods are the seats on the plane. Since the airlines have sold so many miles to the banks, they have a massive debt of flights they owe to passengers. To protect themselves, the airlines have to act like a central bank. They cannot let everyone redeem their miles at once, or they would go out of stock. This is why you see the gatekeeper behavior we have been discussing. The airline uses high point prices and limited availability to control the flow of redemptions. They have built a system where the bank makes a promise to the consumer, but the airline is the one who decides if that promise is kept. You also have to consider the merchant fees. Every time you swipe your rewards card, the shop owner pays a fee of about 2 or 3% to the bank. A portion of that fee goes toward buying the miles that end up in your account. This means that in a way, the cost of your free flight is being paid for by every person who walks into that store, including people who pay with cash and do not get any rewards. This is a massive systemic transfer of value. We have moved from a simple thank you gift to a multi-billion-dollar financial product that links your daily spending to the price of jet fuel and stability of the banking sector. When you understand that the airline is essentially a bank that happens to operate airplanes, you start to see why the rules are so complex. The complexity is the defense mechanism of a system that has become too big to fail. The gatekeepers are not just managing seats. They are managing a global financial balance sheet where your points are the currency. By connecting these dots, you can see that you are part of a cycle that involves millions of people and billions of dollars every single hour of the day. Let us talk about why it is so hard to walk away from these programs even when you know the math is getting worse for you. This is the personal analysis of a concept called sunk cost in psychological commitment. Most people have a moment where they look at their account and see 50,000 or 100,000 miles. At that point, you stop asking if the program is good and you start asking how you can protect what you already have. This is a powerful shift in your behavior. You might find yourself in a situation where you need to book a flight, and the airline you usually fly is $100 more expensive than a competitor. A rational person might say that saving $100 is the best choice. But when you are inside a rewards program, you think about the points you will miss out on if you switch. You might calculate that those missed points are worth $50, so now the gap feels smaller. Then you think about your elite status. You think about the free checked bag or the slightly better seat. Suddenly, you are willing to pay $100 more just to stay inside the ecosystem. This is exactly how the gatekeepers want you to think. They have created a system where the perceived cost of leaving is higher than the actual benefit of staying. We should look at the numbers of a typical year of spending. If you spend $30,000 on a credit card, you might earn 30,000 points. If those points are worth 1 cent each, you have earned $300. But to get that $300, you had to commit all of your spending to one specific bank and one specific ecosystem. If you had used a simple 2% cashback card, you would have $600 in actual cash that you could spend anywhere. The reason many of us do not do the simple math is because the rewards programs use psychological hooks. They give you a sense of progress. Every time you log in and see your balance go up, your brain treats it like a victory. This is a form of gamification that makes spending feel like earning. But we have to be honest about the trade-offs. When you commit to a program, you are giving up your freedom to be a flexible consumer. You are giving the airline and the bank a monopoly over your travel choices. This creates a situation where they can raise prices or change the rules because they know you are unlikely to leave your points behind. Think about the time you spend researching how to use your miles. If you spend 10 hours trying to find a flight to save $500, you are essentially working for $50 an hour. For some people, that is a great deal. For others, it might be a poor use of time. The problem is that we rarely factor the cost of our own time and mental energy into the equation. The gatekeepers rely on this. They want the system to be just complex enough that you feel like you have to stay engaged to win. If it were too simple, you would realize that the value is often lower than it appears. If it were too hard, you would give up. They keep you in the middle. This is why you feel a sense of relief when you finally book that free flight. Even if you had to pay $200 in fees and spend 40 hours searching for it. The relief comes from finally redeeming the debt that the airline owed you. You feel like you won the game, but the house has already collected its profit from your years of loyalty and your thousands of dollars in spending. Understanding this psychological trap is the only way to make a clear decision. You have to be willing to look at your points balance and realize that it is not a savings account. It is a marketing tool designed to influence your future choices. Once you see that, you can start making decisions based on real dollars and actual convenience instead of a digital number that the gatekeeper controls. Summarizing this part of our talk, you should now understand that your loyalty is being managed through a mix of perceived value and the fear of losing what you have earned. To take control, you have to be willing to walk away from the points when the math does not make sense for your life. Let us look at a simple scenario involving two neighbors to see how these programs impact our society as a whole. Imagine two people named Mike and Sarah. They both live on the same street, and they both shop at the same local grocery store. Every week, Mike and Sarah each spend $200 on food and household items. Mike likes to keep things simple, so he pays for his groceries with $20 bills. Sarah uses a premium rewards credit card because she wants to earn points for a family vacation. When they get to the register, the price for the groceries is exactly the same for both of them. However, what happens behind the scenes is very different. When Sarah swipes her card, the grocery store owner has to pay a fee to the bank. This fee is usually around 3%, which on a $200 bill is $6. To cover the cost of these fees, the store owner raises the price of milk and bread and eggs for everyone. This means Mike is paying a higher price for his food even though he is using cash. A portion of that $6 fee goes back to Sarah in the form of points. Over the course of a year, Sarah might earn $500 worth of travel points while Mike earns zero. In this situation, Mike is effectively subsidizing Sarah's vacation. This is a massive hidden transfer of wealth that happens every day in our economy. On a societal level, we have created a system where people who do not have access to credit or who prefer to use cash are paying more so that others can fly for free. Most people are not aware of this because the costs are baked into the price of every item we buy. It is not just about Mike and Sarah. It is about a structural shift in how we value different types of consumers. This creates a pressure for everyone to join the credit system, even if they would prefer not to, because if you do not participate, you are essentially paying for a service you will never receive. We also have to consider the impact on small businesses. A local coffee shop might lose thousands of dollars every year to credit card fees. To stay in business, they have to pass those costs on to you. This is why you sometimes see a different price for cash versus credit, but in most places, the price is the same. This societal layer of the rewards game shows us that points are not just coming out of thin air. They are a redistribution of money from merchants and cash users to the banks and the most frequent travelers. When you see a high sign-up bonus of 100,000 points, remember that the money to pay for those points is being collected a few cents at a time from every transaction made in the country. By looking at these real numbers, we can see that the reward system is not just a personal choice. It is a societal structure that influences the cost of living for everyone. It rewards those who can manage complex financial tools and places a hidden tax on those who cannot. Understanding this helps you see that the gatekeepers are not just managing an airline seat map. They are participating in a system that reshapes the economy of your local neighborhood. To understand the current state of the game, we have to look at the most advanced defensive tools the gatekeepers have ever built. We are moving away from the era of fixed rules and into the era of dynamic control. In the past, if you wanted to fly from Chicago to Los Angeles, you knew it would cost exactly 25,000 miles because that was the price on printed chart. This gave the traveler a sense of certainty. But for the airline, this was a systemic risk because they could not adjust the price if a sudden surge in demand happened. Today, the printed award chart is almost extinct. It has been replaced by algorithms that change the price of a seat every few seconds. This is called dynamic pricing. Imagine you are looking at a flight that costs 30,000 points at 10 o'clock in the morning. You go to get a cup of coffee, and when you come back at 10:15, the price has jumped to 45,000 points. This happens because the system saw your interest and adjusted the price to protect the airline's profit margin. The gatekeeper is no longer a human clerk. It is a piece of software that calculates the maximum amount of points it can extract from you at any given moment. This shift has a massive impact on the value of your points. When the airline can change the price without warning, they have the power to devalue your entire account overnight. If you have saved up 100,000 points thinking they are worth $2,000 in travel, the airline can decide tomorrow that those same points are only worth $1,000. This is why many experts say that you should earn and burn your points rather than saving them for a long time. Holding onto points is like holding a currency that has 100% inflation. The system is designed to favor the house because the house controls the supply and the price. We also see this in how banks have integrated with these algorithms. They can offer you a transfer bonus where they give you an extra 20% if you move your bank points to a specific airline. This might seem like a great deal, but often the airline will raise their point prices at the exact same time. The systemic goal is to keep you in a state of constant calculation so you never quite feel like you have mastered the system. They have also introduced more restrictive fare classes like basic economy. Even if you use your points to book a flight, you might find that you are not allowed to bring a carry-on bag or choose your seat unless you pay more cash. This is the gatekeeper adding a second layer of defense. They are unbundling the product so that the point price only gets you through the door, but the actual experience requires more investment. By using these systemic tools, the airlines and banks have created a world where the consumer is always at a disadvantage. They have more data than you do, and they have the ability to change the rules of the game while you are playing it. Understanding this dynamic control is essential for any modern traveler. You have to realize that your points are not a stable asset. They are a temporary permission to access a system that is actively working to limit your benefit. When you see a price change, it is not a technical error. It is the gatekeeper performing a precise calculation to ensure that the airline always stays ahead. By the end of this analysis, you should see that the era of the simple gift is over, and the era of the algorithmic gatekeeper is in full effect. The system is now a living entity that responds to your behavior in real time to defend its own bottom line. We have looked at the history of these programs from the first paper, stamps to the modern algorithms that change prices in a second. To bring this all together, we must look at where you stand right now in this system. You are holding a collection of digital promises that you have earned through your labor and your daily spending. You might have 10,000 points or 1 million points, but you have to realize that you do not own these points. In the fine print of every loyalty program, it clearly states that the miles have no cash value and can be revoked at any time for any reason. This is the reality of the integration between your life and these corporate systems. You have spent years making choices about where to eat, and which card to use, and which airline to fly. You have done this because you were promised a specific reward. But as we have seen, the gatekeeper has learned to defend the system by making those rewards harder to find and more expensive to buy. Every time you earn a point, you are giving the bank and the airline an interest-free loan. They get the use of your data and your money today, while they push the fulfillment of their promise further into the future. Consider the math one more time. If you save your points for 5 years and the airline raises prices by 20% every year, your points lose over half of their purchasing power before you ever use them. You are running a race where the finish line is moving away from you faster than you can run. This is the core tension of the modern rewards era. We are all participating in a private economy where the rules are written by the people who owe us the money. There is no central bank to protect the value of your miles. There is no government regulation to ensure that the seats you were promised will actually be available. You are essentially gambling that the system will remain stable just long enough for you to get out. Even as you listen to this, the algorithms are processing millions of data points to decide how to squeeze more value out of the next transaction. The gatekeepers are not your friends, and they are not rewarding your loyalty out of kindness. They are managing a massive financial liability, and their primary goal is to make sure that liability never becomes a problem for their shareholders. You have been trained to think of these points as a gift, but they have become a tool of control that influences your behavior and your budget. You are left with a difficult choice. You can continue to play the game and spend your time and mental energy trying to beat the algorithm, or you can stop and realize that the house always wins in the long run. The gate is closing, and the requirements for entry are getting higher every day. You have to decide if the pursuit of a free flight is worth the cost of your freedom as a consumer. The system is working exactly as it was designed, and it is not designed for you. It is designed to defend itself against you.